Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, all of the Dodgers' current starting pitchers are right-handed, and most of the starting pitchers on their radar are right-handed. Is that an issue? We'll dig into those numbers. Tyler Glasnow held his welcome press conference over Zoom with the media. We'll talk a little bit about what he had to say about his arm injury and what number he'll be wearing and the history of that number with the Dodgers. That's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. Then you can be an everydayer just like we are. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. My co-host is Vince Samperio. We are doing a split episode today, so it'll be me for the first half, Vince for the end. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we're bringing you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And speaking of getting started, Tyler Glasnow got his Dodgers tenure started on Monday. He had a Zoom conference with the media from his car, answered a lot of questions about the process of being traded, how excited he was to be in LA, a lot of different things. And we're going to dig into a few of those things. He talked about his arm injury and what the status is, what that was, and how he feels about that. Vince will talk about that in the last segment today. We also found out what number he'll be wearing. He'll be wearing number 31. I'll talk about that in the second segment. But first, I want to talk about right-handed pitchers. Glasnow adds to a list of Dodgers starting pitchers who are currently all right-handed. Clayton Kershaw is still a free agent. We're not sure if or when he will pitch for the Dodgers again. And most of they traded for Ohtani. He's not pitching this year, but he's a right-handed pitcher starting in 2025. They've got Bobby Miller. They've got Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, Michael Grove, and now Tyler Glasnow. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is on the radar. He's right-handed. Most of the prospects coming up, you've got Nick Frasso and Kyle Hurt and River Ryan, a lot more right-handers. And there's been some consternation about that. We get a lot of comments about that in our YouTube comments, which, by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comment section. I've been hearing about it on social media too. And we talked about it briefly. Vince and I did on an episode last week, but by briefly, I mean, we spent maybe 45 seconds on it. And I thought it deserves more of a 7 or 8 minute segment than just a quick passing conversation. I talked about it a little bit on Twitter too, but I know not everybody who listens to this show or watches it also follows me on Twitter. And I also know the Twitter algorithm doesn't show everybody, because I know even two people who follow me on Twitter asked me about it on Monday, asked me about the right-handed heavy thing. And so I was able to just shoot them a link to the Twitter thread I had posted a couple days ago. But I know not everybody sees anything. So I thought this would be a good time to talk about that. And here's the main reason that I don't have concerns about the Dodgers rotation being too righty heavy is because most guys who stick as starting pitchers stick because they don't have severe platoon splits. By platoon splits, if you don't know that phrase, it means in general, left-handed hitters hit better against right-handed pitchers. Right-handed hitters hit better against left-handed pitchers. That's true for most players in baseball, most hitters. But the interesting thing is, it's less true for pitchers. And you would think, since every pitcher is pitching to a hitter, that you would think it would be impossible for that to be true for hitters, but not for pitchers. And the reason that's the case is starting pitchers, relief pitchers usually have pretty sizable splits. And that's part of the reason they're relief pitchers. The two main reasons, three main reasons a guy ends up in relief. Most pitchers start as starting pitchers. The three reasons they end up in relief: either they don't have the stamina to go deep into a game, throw a lot of pitches, or they don't have the pitch repertoire to get through a lineup multiple times, or they have more extreme splits, and so they want to the teams want them in a position where they can have a little more control over which batters they face. And so most pitchers with severe platoon splits end up as relievers, not as starters. And so I ran the numbers on some of these right-handed pitchers that the Dodgers have. Tyler Glasnow, in his career, his OPS allowed against lefties and his OPS allowed against righties. Against lefties, it's 681. Against righties, it's 667. So lefties have hit slightly better against Glasnow, but both sides have not hit well at all against him. Walker Buehler, 609 against lefties, 622 against righties. Righties have actually hit slightly better than lefties against him, but again, both sides have struggled mightily against Walker Buehler. Bobby Miller, 607 against lefties, 692 against righties. He's another guy with actually reverse platoon splits in the big leagues, but in the minors, we've seen that he didn't really have platoon splits. He could get righties and lefties out. Shohei Ohtani, 662 against lefties, 565 against righties. So yeah, it's a platoon split, but even against lefties, he is elite. His OPS allowed against lefties is much better than most people's, even left-handed pitchers' OPS allowed against lefties. So all four of those guys fit that bill of they have good stuff, and so they don't have platoon splits. I can't find splits for MPB where Yoshinobu Yamamoto has been pitching, but based on his success and what I've read in some articles, I assume his splits were similar, that he gets righties and lefties out. Emmett Sheehan last year had splits in the big leagues, but in the minors, he was actually elite against both lefties and righties, actually better against lefties. Clayton Kershaw at his peak, he was one of the best pitchers in baseball history. In Kershaw's career, righties have a 591 OPS against him. Lefties have a 561 OPS against him. So yeah, righties hit him a little bit better, but a sub 600 OPS, like nobody hits Kershaw. That's why he's an elite starting pitcher. And so I don't think the Dodgers are concerned at all about the handedness of their starting pitchers. Now, when you get into the bullpen, yeah, you do start to either you need to have guys with the splits you're looking for, or ideally guys without splits. And, if you look at Clayton Kershaw, the reason he's been so effective is because he has three great pitches: a fastball, a slider, and a curveball. The slider makes it nearly impossible for right-handed hitters to hit off of him. And then the slider and the curveball against lefties, it's been a system that has worked for him throughout his career. Bobby Miller has 5 or 6 pitches. Walker Buehler has 5 or 6 pitches. That's what you need. And so that's why the number of pitches to get through multiple times to the lineup and the splits, they're almost inextricably connected. They are almost the same thing. If you have good enough stuff to get guys out, you have good enough stuff to get guys from both sides of the plate out. And so I don't think the Dodgers are going to worry about Yamamoto. Like, I've seen people saying they should sign Imanaga instead of Yamamoto from Japan, because Imanaga is a left-handed pitcher. Yamamoto is the better pitcher. Based on what we know in Japan, Yamamoto is a better pitcher. So that's why the Dodgers are going after Yamamoto. Once upon a time, from 1992 to 1997, the Dodgers went 600 and something games. What was it? 681 straight games started by right-handed pitchers. And, as I joked when we talked about this last week, those Dodgers weren't actually very good, but that wasn't the pitching fault. The pitchers were actually pretty good. To tell you what a different era it was, during those almost 5 full seasons, from September of 92 to July of 97, the Dodgers, while every start was made by a right-handed pitcher, they only had 11 different starting pitchers during that time, which is just crazy. You had starts by Ramon Martinez and Tom Candiotti had about 160 starts each, Pedro Estacio over 130, and then Hideo Noma, Ismael Valdez, Oral Hershiser, Kevin Gross, all pushing 100. Chan-Ho Park, about 40. Kevin Tapani, 11. Willie Banks, 6. And in between those. And that's a crazy amount of – the Dodgers last year used more starting pitchers than that in one season. So 11 starting pitchers in 5 seasons is pretty crazy. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the lefty righty thing. I just think for starting pitchers, it doesn't matter almost at all. Like I just think it doesn't matter. If you can get righties and lefties out, it doesn't matter which hand you're using to do it. And that's what the Dodgers are going to be focusing on. I think that's what every team focuses on with starting pitchers. And it's the relievers where you have more of a concern about that. I'm going to come back in a minute. I'm going to talk about Tyler Glasnow's number. He's going to wear number 31. I'm going to dig into the history of that number with the Dodgers. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Moneyline bet just means you pick the winner. You don't need to pick over under. You don't need the spread. You just pick which team is going to win the game. And if you're right, $150 in bonus bets that you can use anywhere on FanDuel. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Hey, I'm back. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Especially want to thank our everydayers, those of you who are with us every weekday morning. We really appreciate it. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning, and then voila, you're an everydayer. And we love it. If you want to join our Locked On Dodgers Insider Club, just go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. This is a text message group where you will get text messages from us periodically, just our thoughts, maybe things that aren't going to make it to the podcast, aren't going to make it to social media, but our Dodger thoughts, and we can have one-on-one conversations. You can reply to us. We'll chat with you. It's a lot of fun talking Dodgers with you here, and it's fun to do it on Subtext too. So go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's just a few bucks a month, and they have a free 14-day trial for you to check it out. Remember, you can check out the two 24/7 streaming channels that Locked On has on YouTube. There's Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, both giving you all the sports coverage you need. Obviously, one focused more on Los Angeles and one on the national story. So check out both of those channels on YouTube. And with that said, Tyler Glasnow, one of the things that came out of his press conference with the media over Zoom on Monday was that he will be wearing number 31. And he mentioned that 31 is the number that he wore. He said in Little League, I listened to the context, and I don't think he actually meant the Little League organization. He was using that in the generic term, like the team I played on when I was a kid. Sounds like a travel ball team, which made more sense to me because my Little League never had number 31. We had numbers 1 through 13 or 14, depending on how many kids were on the team. And I was always either number 13 or 14 because the jerseys were ordered by size, and I was always the biggest kid on the team. So I got the highest number, which, no fun, but that's how it was. But Tyler Glasnow grew up wearing number 31, not for any specific player, as far as I can tell. He said his two favorite players were Sean Green and Clayton Kershaw. I thought there might've been a Mike Piazza connection there or something, but apparently not, at least not that he mentioned. But the Mike Piazza connection does exist in that he will be a number 31 for the Dodgers. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about the history of that number with the Dodgers. There's been actually two different Hall of Famers who've worn that number for the Dodgers. In addition to Mike Piazza, you had Hoyt Wilhelm when he pitched for the Dodgers from 1971 to 1972. He wore number 31. Other guys, Jack Fimple. Yeah, those of you who have been everydayers for a long time, remember we used to do a segment called Obscure Former Dodger of the Day. Was that on this podcast or on our previous podcast? I think Obscure Former Dodger was this podcast, Locked On Dodgers. If you don't know, we used to do a weekly show called the Scully Avenue Podcast before we joined the Locked On Network. We got like 1,500 episodes between the two shows, and I cannot always keep it straight. But Jack Fimple, I believe, was our first ever Obscure Former Dodger. He wore number 31 for 1983 to 1984. I used Jack Fimple on my Immaculate Grid the other day. That was fun. Obviously, the most recent number 31s, Ahmed Rosario last year, Tyler Anderson the year before that, and Max Scherzer the year before that. And for the 6 years before that, Jock Peterson wore number 31, Drew Butera before that. Other notables, Brad Penny from 2005 to 2008, Roger McDowell, Jorge Orta in 1982 before he went to the Royals. Charlie Huff in 1970. He played for the Dodgers more than just in 1970, but he wore, when he first came up with the Dodgers in 1970, he wore number 31 before switching to number 49, which he wore for the rest of his 25-year career. Jim Campanis, Jim Campanis Sr., who's the son of Al Campanis, former Dodgers general manager. When Al Campanis was hired as general manager of the Dodgers, one of his first acts was trading away his son. And more to the point, as far as his wife was concerned, trading away her grandchildren. And one of those grandchildren was Jim Campanis Jr., who later was a minor leaguer, got as high as AAA with the Mariners, played in the Angels minor league system, including in my hometown, Lake Elsinore, when I got to know Jim Campanis pretty well. When I was a teenager and he was a minor leaguer, we're still friends, text once in a while. But his dad wore number 31 in 1966. And another one that doesn't show up, if you go to Baseball Reference and look at the Dodgers uniform number history, this one doesn't show up because this one was a coach, and his name was Jake Pittler, and he wore number 31 as a coach from 1947 through 1957. And when the Dodgers moved to LA, Jake Pittler didn't come along with them. He did stay with the organization as a scout, but didn't want to travel with the team and be in Los Angeles. He was from New York originally. He was born in New York City, Jewish guy from New York, and wanted to stay in New York, where he actually died in Binghamton, New York in 1968 at the age of 73. I found a fun Jake Pittler story when he was managing in the minor leagues, an umpire by the name of something Gare. I can't find his first name now. I can't find it. Anyway, Gair was the last name. I assume this article has his first name somewhere, but I don't know where it is. But at one point, Gare made a call that called out one of Pittler's players at second base, and Pittler came storming out, gesturing, throwing his arms around like crazy, and started screaming at the umpire. But what he screamed at the umpire was, "This doesn't mean a thing. This doesn't mean a thing. I just got to kick up a fuss once in a while so they'll know I'm around. This doesn't mean a thing." Just make sure the umpire didn't eject him. Just, let him know, hey, no hard feelings. I just got to yell sometimes. The umpire said he actually had to turn his head so that the crowd couldn't see him laughing at the incident. So, I think a lot of people would like to see Howard Gare, that's his name, would like to see Dave Roberts get that kind of animation, but I think it would be just for show as much as that was. But yeah, it was. So when you think about the fact that Max Scherzer is going to be a Hall of Famer, 3 different Hall of Famers have worn number 31 for the Dodgers. Probably no more than that. I don't see anybody else like Charlie Huff, I guess, could eventually be elected by some veterans committee, but probably not. And, we have the son of guy who could eventually be in the Hall of Fame, Al Campanis, but considering how Campanis' career ended, probably not. I don't think Jim Neidlinger or Jim Poole are going to make the Hall of Fame. Both of them wore it in 1990. John Shelby wore it in 1987 and 1990 when he had his, in 1988, he had his 25 game hitting streak that he never anticipated, as he would tell you on the Dodgers World Series video. A lot of people have worn number 31 for the Dodgers. Hopefully, Tyler Glasnow will keep up. It's been a pretty good streak. The last 2 pitchers to wear it was Max Scherzer and Tyler Anderson. Both of them pitched really well for the Dodgers. Hopefully, Glasnow can keep that up. Happy that he gets his childhood number, that it happened to be open, because Ahmed Rosario is a free agent now. So that's what number he's to be wearing, and I just thought it would be interesting to you guys to hear some of the history of who has worn number 31 for the Dodgers. And with that said, I guess I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to turn it over to Vince for the last segment, and he's going to talk about Tyler Glasnow's comments to the media about his arm injury, when it started, what it was, how long it lasted, and how he feels about it now. So with that said, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thanks for being an everydayer, and Vince will be along in a minute.
Yo, Dodger fans. Vince here to close out the episode, and here just talk about Tyler Glasnow and, some more from his introductory Zoom call with media. And first and foremost, he just looked excited. Obviously, he had answered a lot of questions about coming home to LA and everything else, and they asked him like you knew you were going to get traded this offseason, and he said, yeah, I pretty much knew I was going to get traded. And he said he called it a best case scenario being traded to the Dodgers. Obviously, for he's from, or grew up in Santa Clarita, came to Dodger games as a kid. Clayton Kershaw was his favorite player to watch growing up, along with Sean Green. And although he did say he was a quote unquote typical Dodger fan because they used to get there in the second and leave in the seventh, but he said that was a product of, Santa Clarita is not that close to Dodger Stadium, so the traffic is real, and a 45-minute trip could become a 2-3 hour trip if it was, traffic. So I guess he did fit the criteria there, but yeah, he just looked excited. He looked happy. He said, he's had people hitting him up all the time, and family saying, "Oh, get a big house so we can all stay there." And everyone just really excited for it. Obviously, being extended past this year is pretty exciting for him as well. And he talked a little bit about the extension part and just how he didn't necessarily. He said going into free agency after this season, he had some thoughts about how it might not have been all about the money, and he wasn't going to be guaranteed to just take the biggest deal he got. And here with the Dodgers, I think he maybe could have got more. He definitely could have got more than 4 and 110 if he had a really good year. And on that 4 years, 110 million was kind of the extension part of what his original deal was that he signed. So good for the Dodgers, obviously, good for him. And yeah, it was just cool to see how excited he was, and answering questions about his number, which Jeff talked about, and like I said, coming to the stadium, and he pitched here once, but hasn't been able to start here, and definitely hasn't been able to really enjoy it. When he first pitched here, he was still with the Pirates, and it didn't go well for him that specific time, but he also was very, very young, and wasn't quite established as a guy that is a legitimate starting pitcher. So cool on that front. Obviously, the front that we're all concerned about the most is his arm, and he did talk about that, and he said, kind of basically the book on him as being injury prone, and that he wasn't that, he said that's fair. That's a fair assessment. He said, given the amount of innings and amount of injuries the previous years, to say that is probably fair. He says, I think for me, the majority of the innings that I've missed have been related to the same injury. This is kind of something we talked about. So Glasnow missed some time in 2019, only 12 starts. 2020, he made 11 starts, which was, I think, basically what he would have made, because of the shortened season. 11 starts is, he might have missed one start there. 2021, he made 14 starts before succumbing to his injury, getting Tommy John. Came back, made a couple starts in 2022, and then last year 21 starts, but that was more a product of them watching him, and he did have one oblique injury. So that's 4 seasons, or 3 seasons where he's had 4 seasons where he's had some injury issues and not been able to make full starts. But he said that it was all kind of stemming from the same injury. He said first time he had issues was 2019, and that was a UCL injury, but then it came back a little bit in 20, but not so, and then more in 21. Obviously, it came, and ultimately he needed Tommy John surgery. And he said, quote, finally I got it fixed, and ever since Tommy John, that's felt amazing. I had the oblique last season for a little bit. That could have just been for me taking time off and getting right back up. He said, quote, I've never really been prone to injuries or anything until that 2019 UCL sprain or tear, whatever it was. And ever since I've gotten that fix, it's never really been something I've thought about. Now compared to then is night and day. I'm looking forward to having some healthy seasons. And this makes, obviously complete sense in the fact that it's been one injury, and in 2019, if maybe he had just preemptively gotten Tommy John, maybe he would have been fine the last few years. And it didn't quite work out that way. I remember in 2021 when he first got injured, and they kind of, he had some thoughts about the sticky stuff ban that had just happened in Major League, and I think he got hurt a couple starts after that, and he was placing the blame on that a little bit, and I'm sure the extra strain or whatever maybe had it, but it seems like now that his UCL was pretty cooked before that, and it was just a matter of time before he needed Tommy John sticky stuff or not. I don't think he got asked any follow-up questions about that specifically, but it's kind of what we talked about in terms of, he's been labeled as injury prone, but it hasn't been a bunch of injuries or multiple of like the same injury. So, 2019 UCL sprain, didn't get surgery. 2020 shortened season, was able to, push through it, pitch in the postseason. And then 21, halfway through the season almost, he ends up needing Tommy John. And it's one of those where, like you said, since he's come back, he said he's felt healthy. He said he's felt stronger. He got the Tommy John. He got Tommy John, like the one, it's a new one with like a synthetic, I guess it's a synthetic way of repairing, or it's like a brace and Tommy John way of completing it. And, he said he's felt stronger. He joked that he felt twice as strong because, that he has, that strength that he feels. So it's all good on his end. And, for the Dodgers, hopefully they're going to get his best years now with him feeling better, feeling stronger, and getting ready to kind of go for that. So it was, he was very candid in his opening time here with the Dodgers, and it was, good to hear. He said it was a hybrid procedure, which included a synthetic collagen band aimed at reinforcing the new ligament. He originally sprained in 2019, recurred in 2021, got surgery. He says, so in my brain, I have double the strength. Last year, he had an innings restriction and the oblique issue, but he said he felt stronger, and he felt, that he could have kept going, and he did pitch in the postseason. So, for what the Dodgers are doing, and, Brandon Gomes said it after, like, we're betting on the person, we're betting on the player, and you feel a lot more comfortable. Obviously, you're never going to feel entirely comfortable probably with a pitcher that has had Tommy John, and, he's not going to be able to just shake that injury-prone label, and not every fan is going to know the specifics of, okay, yes, injury-prone, but it because if you're a guy that pulls a lot of hamstrings, you can't really fix that. So you can be injury prone in that, he's going to pull his hammy once a year, or, oblique is not so much recurring, but once you do hurt your oblique, it's going to take you a while to get back. With this, like I said, in 2019, he probably could have just got the surgery then, and, he might have not had any issues after that. But the fact that he tried to pitch through it, or whatever he got in 2019 to kind of get through it, didn't get it fixed, didn't help himself out in 2020 pitching through it, and then 2021 it eventually gave way. And there's, obviously with Tommy John, it's not an exact science, and everybody's different, first of all, but it's not an exact science in terms of being able to get it twice, or being less susceptible to getting it if you've already had it. We talked about last month or so about all the guys that have come back from 2 Tommy Johns, and talking about Walker Buehler, and some guys have come back and gotten Tommy John like right after, maybe a year or within 2 years after. And Buehler got to last 4 or 5 years in between his. there's a general thought of some potential immunity after getting Tommy John that you have for at least a few years before you might need it again. The Dodgers would be in that window of that. It's not real, but quote unquote immunity, and they have to feel comfortable about that. But Glasnow felt he never felt that strong before as he did last year, and he's obviously. It's not a matter of him wanting to stay healthy because he's a Dodger now and he loves being here, but he feels stronger, and the Dodgers are maybe getting him at the best time right now, and it looks a lot better than maybe it would have in terms of he's injury prone and everything else. Before you look into it, you can put the numbers in front of me and say, he's never thrown more than 100 innings or only once or twice, whatever the case, blah blah blah. When you kind of lay out what it was, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Now, it doesn't mean that he's not going to be injury prone. It doesn't matter, it doesn't mean that he's not going to tweak an oblique or, tweak a groin or tweak a hamstring or, hurt a elbow, hopefully not, but it just makes you feel a little bit better than you did before. So shout out to Glasnow. Shout out to, the Dodgers. They talked a little bit about Manuel Margot in the second part where Brandon Gomes spoke to media. We'll talk about that later this week and kind of his role with the team. But for Glasnow, I was already excited to get him here, and even more excited after seeing this opening Zoom. So it's I'm ready. Like I said, I know there's still work to be done for the Dodgers, but I'm already ready for season. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today or Locked On Sports Los Angeles on YouTube. They're 24/7 streaming channels provided to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Remember, you can find us where you find podcasts and on YouTube. Search for Locked On Dodgers. Become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. And it's a good time right now. There's a lot of excitement around the Dodgers. We're heading into a new year, and make sure you tell your friends and family if they need a Dodger podcast in their life. We got them covered. You can also find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us for either questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, topics. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com. or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. Change My Device Play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. Hey, remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.